Thank you very much, Drakas, and welcome everybody to the post-game lobby, where we will be looking back on our first round of the playoffs and towards the semifinals next week. And joining me are Crepo, Sheepy, and Exile. And what a day we just had!
I mean, this is the last time I ever listened to Sheepy. I usually ask the Fisher for
Not
advice.
that he ever did.
I forgot, and then I asked Sheepy what's it gonna be. H2K is gonna win 3-0. I go on the desk, I repeat that mindlessly, and I look like a clown.
Upsets are great, though, right? And we had a fantastic series, and we're going to start by taking a closer look at that, honestly, incredible performance we just saw on stage from Fnatic. They 3-0 swept today's favorites, H2K. You know, what was it? We heard from Soaz in a post-game interview. No adaptability out of H2K. Is that the TLDR, Sheepy?
Yes, I think so. They were not able to deal with whatever Fnatic put up in those series very clearly. I mean, from the weird draft, but also the way that they played it, I think everything didn't look quite together. So, yeah, a little bit disappointed from H2K, but also Fnatic playing the now croned animal style.
Tell us about the animal style,
Yeah, what is this?
Define it for me.
The animal style is when they pick champions, you're not really sure about what they are doing, and then in combinations, you're also not very sure, and then suddenly they just get really good matchups and make really sick combos and taking fights that you thought you would win.
I thought it was a style of fries, actually, but this is much more interesting. Exile, Caps today. We had Caps versus Febiven. You talked about the fact that Caps is mechanically really gifted, but Febiven should have the upper hand. What happened today?
I think that Caps is just much more comfortable on the champions that he's playing right now. Like we saw, LeBlanc is insane. Also the Aurelion Sol into Syndra, which doesn't seem like on paper like a really good matchup, but he managed to like get out ahead and provide more for his team than I thought he would, and this is really impressive.
And I just want to touch on the animal side. I think it actually makes sense that you just... A lot of the times people condone to the meta, like they call them like meta slaves, where you just want to pick the best option and the best matchup on paper, but it may not be the best champion that you want to play, and it may not be as comfortable for you to then make flashy plays or forward plays. And I think that's what we saw in Fnatic. Like so many games, they were playing solo queues. Like Finley, pick me this champ, get me Aurelion Sol, get me Twitch, get me Camille support, and they went ham with it.
Yeah, they went ham. But Sheepy, like, okay, obviously there is an argument to be made for comfort picks, especially if you're an absolute underdog, but yeah, of course we get the player of the series, Reckless, because he made it work, because we talk about adaptability, but when you get thrown a Twitch, a Vayne, and then obviously the Kennen, the Aurelion Sol at you, not a lot of people would have answers for that, I feel like. Or
I feel that also this is a little bit result-based analysis.
No, we never do that.
Okay.
what are you talking about?
I feel
that's the whole reason the meta exists, right?
For example, Syndra Aurelion matchup, like I would really like to go over the matchups just to see how it works, because I think if they bring this up against like SKT or whoever and play like weak lanes, so to say, that they should actually
Well, I'm going to grant your wish, but a little bit later on. First, we're going to round up this portion and also take a look back at our first quarterfinal that we saw yesterday. Misfits, they advanced to the semifinals with a win over Splice, and Splice looked to be in the position Fnatic was in 2 games in, but then Misfits, they turned it all around.
Yeah, I think a lot of it snowballed over power in the mid lane. Maybe you can say more about it, XL.
Yeah, I think that definitely like the LeBlanc pick enabled a lot for Misfits, and yeah, Splice went for Kennen 3 times and it didn't look as good as today.
They were setting it up for today.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, like after maybe the second Kennen game, they maybe should have, like they saw that it didn't work out too well, and like usually players lose confidence, but I guess they wanted to keep the pick up and still thought that it's good, so yeah. But Misfits played this out really well.
I mean, Kobe tweeted about it. It was one of their strongest performing scrim picks, and it can also just be, it can be coincidence 3 games in a row where like a random roam from mid screws your early game plan, and maybe a misplay in lane messes up the pick, but in essence it could work. I really think we saw this, the strength of Kennen plus Shendo today in game 3, where you need that zone from the Shen W to keep the Kennen alive as he goes for his own ultimate, because he's not the AP Kennen. He needs time to ramp up in fights. He just needs a little bit more peel, and Fnatic is much better at providing that for Reckless than Splice was for Kobe.
Yeah, and Maxwell also said it yesterday on the desk. There is really, when it comes to pocket picks, that is a true pocket pick. He just knows the boundaries of that champion so well, but then you gotta say, well, apparently also of Twitch and of Vayne and of Lucian.
I mean, Twitch is a super cool champion because it changes the mindset of an entire opposing team, where you can no longer check minimap as like, where is this AD carry? And he can be in places where you do not expect him. It's the same when you play versus Evelyn. Evelyn always picks up in win rate when she gets reintroduced in the metagame, and then falls off again when people learn how to play against it. It's the same with Twitch. Play 10 or 20 games against the Twitch and you will be much better at dealing with it.
Yeah, especially like when you scrim like 60 games a week against those static AD carries, which don't do this flashy plays like Cannon or Twitch. And suddenly someone picks this up in a game on stage. Then it looks like you don't know exactly the limits of the champion, like the player does. This is what also makes those picks extra strong.
Yeah,
that's a great point, obviously. And H2K will not have practiced against a lot of the things that came out today and the curveballs. And with that, we have our lock-in for the semifinal schedule. Fnatic, they have secured the last semifinal spots, which means that we'll have G2 up against Fnatic and the Unicorns of Love up against Misfits. I feel like after watching today's matches, you guys will gladly take that matchup versus Misfits over Fnatic, maybe because the amount of curveballs. Am I correct, Shippy?
I think that I'm really not too sure. I have to like rewatch a little bit more closer the matchups, because I really think those picks are not picked for a reason. Like, you cannot just go into those matchups and expect yourself to win or come out ahead. Like, you will provide something in the later stages, and that's what you pick it for. I think also the pick and bans were a little bit all over the place today, with like Esri being picked in early and then picking Thresh versus Esri alone. And I think it's a little bit questionable what happened in the pick and ban phase itself. But I think that if, for example, G2 right now, how they are looking, I mean, after the Rocket games, or if they practice properly, will be able to punish Fnatic, and it will get way harder to surprise, you know, like a well-trained team.
Yeah. Harder, but not impossible. I feel like
it's definitely not impossible. Yeah. I think we saw a couple cases where, yes, there's like I think especially game one, it's very results oriented, because the early laning phase did not play out the way it technically on paper should have, based on our opinions. But then again, game two, the Vayne made a lot of sense, so that's where an opening. But I think if you play against Sven on bot lane, this guy is really good at, especially even when you listen to his stream, breaking down bot lane matchups to the core and the fundamentals behind it. Therefore, he can extrapolate much better, like, how do you play against a Twitch? And they also have better communication from bot lane to the team when one of these picks needs more ganks or less ganks or needs to be called for a roam. I think the G2 bot lane is catered better at around dealing and containing Reckless and Jezz.
Oh yeah, the bot lane, because even Mythy, with not being on top of his game, arguably this split, he also has that knowledge, which is pretty insane for that bottom lane. So we'll see what happens there, and we are going to dive deeper on next week's fight for the finals and get a word in with Fnatic's coach Finlay. So if you're joining us in client, be sure to load up youtube.com/LOL Esports for the full-length edition of the post-game lobby.